Aloha. So I am going to just get started. People might be filtering in when they have time, but I want to keep this fairly brief. I don't want to overwhelm you like maybe I did with the supplements discussion. But I have had several people reach out to me fairly recently, just in the last couple months, about cholesterol. Recently, I had a friend who's very worried about their cholesterol, doesn't want to take a statin, but tried the red yeast rice, didn't do well with that. I think had diarrhea or something, and just wondering what to do about the cholesterol levels. So, of course, my first question is, what are the particle numbers? Because cholesterol in and of itself does not tell you much. So again, I just had a talk where I was saying how cholesterol is kind of like saying you have high bacteria in your body. Well, that doesn't really mean anything because you can have good bacteria, bad bacteria. Where is the bacteria? Is it in your gut? Is it in your bloodstream? So just saying you have high cholesterol doesn't give a very good picture as to what's going on. Our bodies naturally make cholesterol. Our brain is made of cholesterol. Our cell membranes are made of cholesterol. Cholesterol is vitally important to the body. So we don't want to just lower cholesterol, just taking a general total cholesterol level as it being high. That being said, I should have looked this up. I think it was 20, maybe 30 years ago. So right now you want your total cholesterol to be below 200. It used to be 300. So again, you want to make decisions based on data, so you want to make sure that whatever cholesterol you're treating is something that actually needs to be treated. So, again, it's just treating a number. It's not saying, so the reason we get weird about cholesterol is heart disease, right? But high cholesterol can be in people with so you can have people with heart attacks with high cholesterol. You can have people with heart attacks with low cholesterol. So there's no real rhyme or reason with that. But what you do have to worry about with cholesterol is the oxidized cholesterol. Once it's oxidized, then it can cause problems. And oxidation is basically rusting. And when that LDL, when that bad cholesterol starts to oxidize, it becomes inflammatory. And inflammation just means, just like when you cut yourself and you swell and it gets painful, that's what's happening inside. And so when you're having inflammation, it's creating like a swelling essentially and blocking blood flow, blocking nutrients. It's just causing problems. So it's good for an acute situation, meaning like something happened, your body responds and it's patching it up. What you don't want is that chronic oxidation, that chronic inflammation. So inflammation in and of itself is not bad. It's that chronic inflammation that then can wreak havoc and cause problems. So generally, when we do a lipid panel, meaning looking at our cholesterol, we look at our total cholesterol, which again, really means nothing. We look at our HDL, which is our good cholesterol. We look at our LDL, which is our bad cholesterol. And then sometimes they throw in like a ratio or the very low LDL cholesterol, which is just, again, it's kind of a particle number. But again, the good and the bad cholesterol also don't tell us much. So it's really dialing down into the particle numbers, the particles of your cholesterol to get a better idea as to, do I need to be worried about this? Because again, we need cholesterol. Cholesterol in and of itself is not bad, just like fat is not bad. But when we can do a test and figure out those particles, then we can make decisions as to, okay, maybe I should be on a medicine, but also I also maybe really need to dial in my diet to make sure, because just because you have those particle numbers, also the levels. So maybe you need to be on medicine for a little bit as you're working your diet. So there's a lot of different factors. And you have to be careful too, because statins, which you take for lowering cholesterol, also cause diabetes. So you don't want to trade one thing for another, especially if you don't need to. That's the critical part. So, and let me know if you have any questions, either put them in the chat or just unmute too. So I put together a share screen. Okay. So, all right. So I put together a little PowerPoint just because sometimes visually it's easier to go through. So I just wanted to talk a little bit too about the American Heart Association, what their criteria is for high cholesterol. So LDL, which is that bad cholesterol, over 190. So again, my friend that was concerned about her cholesterol, I think it was like 156. So again, it's not in that critical range. So over 190 plus a first degree relative that also has an LDL over 190. And first degree relative is going to be your mother or father, so a parent or a sibling. It's not your aunt or your grandma or your cousin. It's parents and siblings. That's the first degree relative. Or you have premature heart disease already, and you're a man that's 55 and older or a woman that's 60 and older. Okay, so that's sort of just what we're dealing with right now. So the implications for that is you want to intervene early, and if that is considered familial high cholesterol. So then you would want to take a statin or a PCSK9 inhibitor. Those are the ones that really lower the cholesterol. But again, we're talking higher levels of labs. And then with that, you always, always, always want to take CoQ10, because statins deplete your CoQ10 levels, which gives people these side effects. So you hear people taking statins and they get the muscle aches, the nausea, and they're fatigued and all of this stuff. That's from the statin depleting your CoQ10. Your CoQ10 is the energy stores in the heart. So that's what gives you your energy and helps the heart pump. So statins, again, are useful in certain situations. So if you have familial hypercholesterol and you need to take a statin, always take the CoQ10 with it to replete your store so you don't end up, feeling like junk for the rest of your life. And then optimizing your vitamin D levels, very important, because vitamin D, as we know, is good for everything. So really important to optimize that as well. So genetics. So again, this is all familial, meaning there's genetics involved with it. So one of the things you want to look at with your cholesterol, so you can get this detailed cholesterol panel, one of it is Lp(a). So Lp(a) is a genetic marker that has been shown to increase your risk of heart attack, valvular aortic stenosis, meaning stenosis is just being stuck, right? The valve in the aorta is stuck. That should be coronary artery stenosis, the same thing. Coronary artery gets stuck. Carotid stenosis, the carotids get stuck. Ischemic stroke, meaning it's from a blockage, and then heart failure. So Lp(a), kind of want to know what that is, because again, you're not going to get that on a general lipid panel. You got to get a more expansive lipid panel to know what your Lp(a). Now, if your Lp(a) is normal, then and your cholesterol is elevated over the, you know, what the normal levels are, don't really have to worry so much. You know, you can do, obviously you always want to do lifestyle stuff, but it's not as much of a concern. So really important to know your LP little a. ApoE, I talked about this on Monday for a brief second. There's 3 types, and these are alleles. So they're genetic. You get one from your mother and you get one from your father. So there's 3 types. There's the 2, 3, and 4 ApoE. 2 is beneficial, actually. 3, I start to worry. 4 is the not so good one. So you can get different kinds. So you can get a 2 and a 4, a 3 and a 4, a 4 and a 4. So the 3 and a 4, well, anything with a 4 is going to be higher risk. So again, you want to check your ApoE to see, do you have something that's to worry about? So if you've got ApoE4 from your mother and your father, genetically, real easy to turn those switches on. It doesn't mean that you do have it. Again, it's all lifestyle dependent. So if you're not eating great, I'll get into this on the next slides, but if you have ApoE4, very important to have a low fat diet. So a lot of people are on these keto, paleo, meat is getting popular now. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but I always say there's no one perfect diet, because some people need a little bit of meat, but if you have an ApoE4 or even a 3-4, you want to avoid meat. These people do well on a vegan diet because they are at much higher risk of cardiovascular disease and early cardiovascular disease. So important to know what that is. So here we go. So the ApoE4, if you have a 3-4 and a 4-4, you're going to want to monitor for cognitive decline, because also with heart disease comes Alzheimer's and brain disease, because we know cardiometabolic disease kind of affects everything, right? So ApoE4 also affects Alzheimer's. You want to do low simple carb, low glycemic index. You want to do low fat, specifically low saturated fat. You want to be very aggressive on the omega-3 supplementation, because that is going to help with protect you if you have this ApoE3 or 4, and avoid alcohol. Even a little bit of alcohol can be really damaging in these genotypes. So again, I don't want to make this, try not to get too overwhelmed in like all the genetic stuff, and I have a slide after this that goes through all the tests, what they're good for. I have like it broken down into a table, but I just want to kind of talk about it first. So again, this is just an expanded test. If you know your ApoE status and your LP little a, gives you so much more information about your cholesterol and whether you really should be worried about it. Because right now there's people, like, again, doing these keto and paleo diets thinking it's going to help them with their diabetes, which it can. But if you have this ApoE4 allele from your mother and father, you're going to have, you're speeding up your cardiovascular risk at that point. So low carb, low sugar, low fat. So these are the people that would do well with like vegan, technically, a good vegan, again, and avoiding alcohol and high omega-3. Okay, so here's, hopefully it's a little small, but I can, I'll have a PDF of this that you can use. So the lab, so again, this is what you would bring. So I think it's the Genova. You can order this test. I think it's like $200, or you can ask your doctor to order these, like an expanded lipid panel. And if they don't know what it is, give them these labs and ask them to test. So definitely the LP little a and your E status. And then, so like on here, these are the optimal values, just so you can kind of have an idea of what you're looking for when you get your results. And then I talked about how, so the LDL-P means particle. So that's just saying it's an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease and also diabetes. And then LDL pattern, so there's A and B. B you always can think of as bad. So those are going to be the smaller, denser LDL versus A, which is going to be these fluffy, buoyant LDL. So that's why just knowing what your LDL is, again, doesn't tell you much. So you want to know, do you have LDL pattern A or pattern B? Then it tells you a little more like, okay, I've got the fluffy kind. So if my LDL is, 160 and it's elevated, I don't really have to worry too much. I can still keep working on my diet and lifestyle, things like that, but don't necessarily need to go on a statin. And then going further into the ApoE genotype, which I talked a little bit about, and then the A and B. And then here's some more. So then there's the ratio ApoB to ApoA1. This is just kind of getting into the weeds. And then your oxidized LDL. That's another one, like I was talking about with the oxidation, can be important because we want to avoid oxidation in our body in general. There again with the LP little a, so you want it to be under 30. And then there's some other, the high sensitivity CRP, the C-reactive protein, is also a marker of inflammation. And so something that you can look for. Now, this last slide is just about supplements, foods that you can use for your cholesterol in general. So I'm sure many of us have heard of resveratrol, found in grapes, the skin of the grapes. There's some dosages and what it does. So reduces the triglycerides, your total cholesterol, and your LDL. NAC, very popular lately, really good for lung health, but also blocks the uptake of LDL, your bad cholesterol. Then we've got aged garlic extract, bergamot. Bergamot's another great one for cholesterol. Reduces your total cholesterol, your LDL, your triglycerides. Also helps with sugars and increases your HDL. Niacin is a great one for cholesterol, as well as some other things, really good for your mind, stress, and people with bipolar, schizophrenia, things like that. So it reduces the total cholesterol, your LDL, your ApoB, your triglycerides. And what it does is it helps shift your LDL from the small B type to the large fluffy A type, which is great. Then we have the red yeast rice, curcumin, turmeric, green tea. All of those really help cholesterol. Plant sterols are great as well. Pomegranate. Berberine is another one that I usually recommend to my patients that reduces total cholesterol, LDL, triglycerides, lowers sugars, and is anti-inflammatory. And then the omega-3 fatty acids, really important for those ApoE 3 and 4. So let's see here. Okay. Any questions? I wanted to try and keep it to the point. It's hard because this is a very complicated subject and it can be confusing. So I wanted to give you an overview without getting too dialed in, but enough to where you understand. Any thoughts from you guys that are on here? And I can send that chart that has the labs to order. So if you don't if you want to ask your doctor, you can just ask them specifically for those. So I would definitely do the Lp(a), an oxidized LDL, and an ApoE status. And they can throw in a high sensitivity CRP, not a regular CRP, a high sensitivity CRP. Sometimes they come in a whole, they just kind of test everything. But if you're going to your doctor and they're going to do the specific ones, I would ask for those for sure. And then the rest, those ones you will give you a lot of information. And then you can know, like, okay, should I be on a statin? Lifestyle wise, what should I, should I really, do I need to be really avoiding the fat and the meat, or do I just have an elevated cholesterol that, isn't harmful to my heart? Yeah. Questions? Hopefully it wasn't overwhelming. Hopefully it made sense. All right, no questions? Totally clear as mud. I always try and figure out, like, how is this the easiest to explain? But sometimes it's hard, because when you talk about genetics, yeah, it's not. But again, it just goes back to when I have people say I have high cholesterol, what can I do? Or should I take a statin? It's not always so cut and dry, because again, high cholesterol in and of itself doesn't really mean anything. So you really have to go back and have your doctor get these particle numbers. Because again, just taking a statin can cause more problems. So it's going to lower your CoQ10. It's going to make you much more prone to insulin sensitivity and diabetes, cause diabetes. So if you don't have a genetic history or problem, then you could be taking something that you don't necessarily need. Is it really the cholesterol, the problem for inflammation? So again, the cholesterol, total cholesterol, doesn't say much. So again, I was saying in the beginning, like it would be like me saying you have a lot of bacteria. Well, is it good bacteria? Is it bad bacteria? Where is the bacteria? So high cholesterol in and of itself isn't telling you anything. So then we break it down into HDL and LDL. So your HDL is your good bacteria, your good cholesterol, and your LDL is your bad cholesterol. But again, there's so many different types of HDL and different types of LDL. It still doesn't give you much information. So the reason the LDL is considered bad is because it easily oxidizes. And when it oxidizes, it causes inflammation. So again, that's why we get nervous with a high LDL, is because it can become inflammatory, but it doesn't mean that it is. So then you want to look further into those particles. The oxidized LDL and the Lp(a) are going to tell you, okay, this is elevated, meaning I have a high level of oxidized LDL, meaning inflammatory LDL. But just saying your LDL is elevated doesn't, because you can still have LDL in your body and it's not inflammatory. So then you take a statin which may or may not lower your LDL much, but then it causes all these other problems. So that is why it's really important to get those further particle numbers, specifically the Lp(a), your oxidized LDL, and then even your ApoE status, so that you can know, like, okay, because not only ApoE not only determines whether or not you're more prone to cardiovascular events in light of the higher cholesterol, but also brain issues like Alzheimer's and things like that. So that is because, again, in the hospital, people having heart attacks have high cholesterol and low cholesterol. There's no rhyme or reason. So you really have to dig deeper. So when we were talking about cholesterol and LDL and all of this stuff, it's real surface talk. It's like saying sugar's bad. Stop eating sugar. Well, there's good sugar too. Like, what kind of sugar are we talking about? So cholesterol is similar in that sense. So really important that we kind of know what we're talking about when we're talking about cholesterol, and whether or not you should be on medication or not. Now, if you've got this family history, meaning parents or siblings, not grandparents or aunts or cousins or anything like that, parents and siblings that also have LDLs over 190 and heart disease, then think about being on a statin or a PCSK9 inhibitor. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? And Emily, I don't think you have any heart disease or anything, no? Okay.
Not that I know of.
Just hormones, right?
Not that I know of. Yeah, just hormones all over the place. But I wanted to ask you about the ApoE. I was listening to the little Instagram a couple days ago. Letter A. Is that something that we can get tested also through blood?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's usually, I think it's Genova, and they'll do a whole panel, like a real broken down lipid panel, or you'll get like those markers and all everything you'd ever want to know about your lipids. But you can also ask your doctor. They'll have to probably put in a code, because it is an extra, it's not a standard lipid. There are ways to code for it, so insurance covers, but so your doctor will have to put in the specific ones. It doesn't come up as like lipid panel. You just put in lipid panel and it does total cholesterol, HDL, LDL, automatically. But those other ones I was talking about, and the ApoE, you have to specifically order. So sometimes that's why I put it on that list, because if you go to your doctor, they'll have to specifically put in those labs. If you don't go to a separate lab company that'll do it, you got to pay like $200 to do those. But yeah, if you just say you've got a history, I don't know, but they can put something in, so your insurance hopefully pays for part of it. But yeah, so the ApoE is also helpful for any kind of, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, things like that in the family, because those ApoEs also in the brain, and can make you more prone to that.
Is the reason why those are not tests that they automatically do is because of the cost? Because I've never.
That's a good question.
Those things that you've shared with us this week, and doctors have never mentioned that to me, and I wonder if maybe
that's why there's so much misconception with it too. It's a good question, because this has been known and around for a while. But again, it takes about 20 years before things get implemented into regular day-to-day life in healthcare. unfortunately. So what we're reading about today as new research and new things, it's going to take 20 years before that becomes practice. So, I mean, it's been a while since we've known this, but again, I mean, it could be a money thing, you know, and it could also be that it's just easy to say, oh, you have high cholesterol, take a statin. You know, I mean, statins, those companies have a lot of money. And so I think there's also something that feels safe to just say, okay, everyone with high cholesterol, just take a statin. And you cover your bases. You know what I mean? So there's probably several reasons for that. But usually if you go to a functional medicine doctor, they're much more nuanced as far as like checking deeper. Same with the thyroid. You know, the thyroid, they just check TSH and maybe a T3 without looking at, you know, reverse T3, reverse T4, all of that stuff. And to see really what's going on with your thyroid. Because is it the signaling? Is it the thyroid hormone that's not coming out? Is the thyroid hormone out, but it's not getting uptake? You know, it's like there's several things that could be happening. But anyhow, so yeah, it's kind of labs in general.
But doing all of these extra testing, yes, it's costly, but in the long run, it's less costly because it would be avoiding so many complications and health issues that people end up having because they weren't aware of the.
So generally in medicine, how it works is there's like what we call guidelines. So for the guidelines for high cholesterol, it's like, this is what you order. This is what the values you're looking for. If it falls within this, then they take this medication. So it's real, you don't have to think about it much, you know, it's like, okay, they have this, I order that. Unfortunately with cholesterol in these labs, it does become, you know, it gets into genetics, and then you have to think about, okay, you have this genetics, but then this lifestyle and this family, like, okay, is diet going to be enough? You know, so it does become more complicated. But again, you know, to me, it's like you want to do the least harm possible for the patient, and just taking a medicine isn't always not harmful. You know what I mean? Because taking a medicine then causes other problems. So, and it doesn't always mean, because the thing is, if you don't have one of those genes and you have elevated cholesterol and you start taking a statin, it may not do anything for you. Because I have patients that are like, I've been on a statin and my cholesterol hasn't budged, you know, because it's probably not a cholesterol that's responding to a statin, because you don't have the genetic type that requires the statin. So if your Lp(a) is normal and it's not genetic, statin's not going to do anything for your cholesterol, that is. So really important to know those numbers, because if your Lp(a) is high, then a statin will work and it'll be protective. But, you know, I think it's like 20% or less of the population. So then you've got 80% of people maybe with high cholesterol and it's not really doing anything. So, yeah, it's just, it can get complicated. And then there's even, you know, with my colleagues, it's like, well, just take a statin I mean, I have colleagues that just take statins because, oh, I, you know, eat a lot of fat and this and that just to protect myself. And it's like, oh gosh, no, like it doesn't work that way. So, yeah. But it's hard because then that does mean that you have to pay for these extra labs to know. But yeah, a lot of times, hopefully your doctor can order them for you. And
They're probably going to be surprised when we walk in there and say,
yeah,
oh, we'd like to have
generally don't like
all
that,
these other things done. And look at us like, how'd you hear about those?
some are open, some not so much, but it's your health in your body, right? I mean,
right.
you have to advocate for yourself a lot of times. Yeah. Emily, you back on the green juice? Good.
Oh yeah.
Good.
I've been drinking it every morning.
Oh, good.
There was just a couple days that I stopped. But yeah, I missed it.
Yeah. And you
like, got my morning isn't the same without my juice.
And you feel better again?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Good,
and
good.
I even bought the one that's just the celery juice.
Oh yeah.
So I was drinking that, which was really, really good.
And
then I was kind of adding a little bit of that to the other. Yeah. Just kind of making a little combination of them. But that's the celery I love it.
Oh, good. Your body must need it then.
Yeah, it's really good.
Good. Good to hear. And then how's your skin?
It hasn't happened since I started taking it again.
So maybe it was just a detox reaction.
Maybe, yeah.
Who knows?
I just stopped drinking it for a couple of days to see what was going to happen. And then missed it so much and said, I'm going to give it another shot and see if I have the same reaction. So far, no, I haven't. And I think it's been maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks since I started drinking it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I decided to do too was maybe just, I just kind of cut back a little bit, meaning the amount. So maybe instead of like 6 ounces, I'm drinking 4 just to see if that made a difference too. I don't know, but maybe like we said, maybe it was just my body like releasing all of these toxins.
Because your skin is, I mean, that's how you purge stuff, so yeah.
That came out.
Yeah. So Mark, we're talking about, it's been like a few weeks now. One of the calls we talked about green juice, and Emily here was having some fatigue and just napping, needing a nap. Oh, and sugar cravings and just sort of not feeling as energetic. And so I recommended green juice, and she doesn't have a juicer. So what I recommend is Suja, Suja. And I recommend Costco just because it's cheap and you can get a big bottle, but Emily doesn't have Costco membership. So you just got it at...
I got it at Whole Foods.
Oh, at Whole Foods, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they even have it at like Target.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so they have a Mighty Dozen and an Uber Greens. Either are good. And the reason I recommend them is because it's organic. Because again, juicing. So the reason that it's important is because with juicing, you're basically taking 3 to 4 pounds of vegetables and putting it through a juicer and drinking it, as opposed to eating 3 to 4 pounds of vegetables every day, which is like, who can do that? It's a lot. We're busy. I mean, I know the importance of plants, but it's hard for me as well. So that's why drinking a glass of green juice really floods your body with nutrients, phytonutrients, chlorophyll. It still has the soluble fiber in it, but you don't want non-organic because all the pesticide residues in there. So Suja is organic and it's cold pressed, meaning it's not pasteurized. So most juices on the market and milk and yogurt, all that stuff is pasteurized, meaning it's heated. And so you lose the live enzymes when you heat it. Enzymes can't live over 128 degrees, I think. So anything that's pasteurized, all the good bacteria, all the live enzymes are killed. So you want a cold pressed juice. So you keep all those live enzymes. That's the whole point. I mean, you still get some of the vitamins and stuff after the pasteurization, but you want the live enzymes. The enzymes is what gives you energy. That's what builds your body. That's what helps you fuel your body. All the cellular reactions in your body are from enzymes. So we lose our enzymes over time as we age. And eating cooked foods, you're using your own enzymes to then create energy and do cellular processes. So you want to get enzymes from your food so you're not using up yours. So that's why green juice and live food is so good. And juicing is great because you're getting much more volume of foods. You know, you can do pounds and pounds of vegetables and then just drink a glass of it. If you've ever juiced anything, you know, you squeeze all these oranges and you get this little glass. So same with the greens. At Costco, the Mighty Dozen, I think, is like $9 or $10 for a big bottle. I mean, it would cost you more than that, honestly, to buy all the organic produce yourself and juice that much. So it's a pretty good deal. So Emily started drinking it in the morning as her breakfast. And it's just an interesting thing because you think, like, how is juice going to fuel me? It's just a glass of juice, you know, but she had, and it's most of my patients, honestly, when they start drinking the green juice, you have more energy, less of an appetite. It's really remarkable because it's just fueling your body. So yeah, it also is really good for your skin. So Emily was sharing too, because she had stopped for a minute because she was getting some like breakouts on her face, which she had never really had before, and then stopped the juice and then got tired again. And but anyhow, restarted it because she thought maybe it was allergy or something, but I think it was just flushing out toxins. But it is really good for your skin, especially chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is so good for the skin and is actually protective, especially from the sun. So chlorophyll is like human blood, except for one molecule, magnesium. The hemoglobin and the iron for magnesium is essentially the same. So it's kind of like getting a blood transfusion in a sense, but you're getting the magnesium instead of the iron. But the chlorophyll, you actually photosynthesize through your skin, just like plants. So you actually, when you're in the sun and you're drinking greens and even fruits, but especially anything green with chlorophyll, you can photosynthesize, meaning create energy for your body through your skin. And it also acts as a protectant too. So over time, you build almost like a natural sunscreen through your skin, but it also, you know, it just helps, you know, the integrity of your skin is more glowing, you have more energy, it just helps cellular. So this is what I usually recommend to people starting out, because changing diet is just, it's hard. So adding a green juice and changing nothing else can make huge shifts in your health. And so anyway, that's what Emily did, is she just added one green juice. And
I noticed a difference the first day I drank it.
Yeah.
Right away. It was like instant.
That's usually most people. It's pretty immediate, which is great.
Like, is this me? Full of energy. Yeah. And I didn't feel like sluggish, like I need to take a nap. Like I said, I was just like full of energy, and I still feel that way too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look forward to the morning to drink it.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. You get addicted. Mm-hmm. So I tell my patients, I'm like, it's addictive, because then you, especially like when I travel and I don't have my green juice, I'm like, oh gosh, like I need my green juice. But yeah, good.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, but Mark, if you can try doing the green juice, I highly recommend. It's man, just doing that one thing can make a huge, huge difference in your health, your well-being, in your life, in everything, you know.
Nancy, how much do you usually drink? I'm sorry, interrupted you.
Usually about 16 ounces.
Oh, 16 a day?
In the morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then depending how my day is, if I'm not doing like a juice day, like I'll have one in the evening. Just depends, you know. But always one in the morning. Yeah, because I'm not a big breakfast person. I've never been a big breakfast person. So for me, the juice in the morning is all I need. Gives me energy. I don't, yeah, I'm not hungry till about 2, maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then I start to get hungry.
So that tides you over until that time.
Yeah. So usually I'll have a green juice, and then like mid-morning around like 10-ish, I make a matcha, green tea. And then, so between the juice and the matcha, I'm good till about 2. And then I have lunch, and then again, maybe have a juice in the evening. Sometimes I eat again, but I'm telling you, like, you're just not as hungry. You don't need as much food. You know, I'll maybe do a smoothie or something, but yeah, you definitely don't need as much food when you're doing juices and smoothies.
So the green juice in the evening then is your dinner instead of having a meal.
Yeah.
So your main meal is your lunch.
And that's honestly just because I'm not that hungry. You know, sometimes I feel like I just need a little something. So I'll be like, maybe I'll just have a juice or maybe a smoothie. And then that's usually good. And then sometimes I'm hungry, you know, and so I kind of just listen to my body. Like there's, you know, your body kind of naturally goes through like feast and famine phases. So sometimes I'm like hungry and I'm eating a lot during the day, and then for like a day or 2, and then I notice like I'm just not hungry and I really don't eat anything all day. Like I'm just not hungry. I'll just have juice and maybe a smoothie, and I'm like, I'm not that hungry. So I kind of just listen to my body, because sometimes I'm like, man, I'm hungry. I want dinner, and I had lunch, and you know, and I'm like, you know, I don't starve myself. I just eat, and always make sure I have my greens though, like a green juice and something that's gonna, you know, feel me. And then, yeah, and then it kind of just, and I'm not hungry again. So, yeah. All right. Anything else? Any requests for the next one? I just happen to have a bunch of people asking me about cholesterol just separately, like messaging me and about cholesterol. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do a thing on cholesterol. I know the ones that were asking me couldn't be here today live, but anyway, let me know if you have any requests. K2. Yes. So K2 you usually take with vitamin D, D3. So when you take D3, you want to pair it with K2. And what K2 does is it scoops up your calcium from your blood. So calcium, the problem is you don't want calcium floating around in your blood. You want calcium in your bones, and you want calcium in your teeth. The problem is when you take calcium, it doesn't mean that it's not sticking around in your blood. So when you have calcium that doesn't make it to your bones or your teeth, what happens is it calcifies the blood and your arteries, and it stiffens. So just like a pipe in your sink that gets calcification, it gets stiff, hard, and can create plaques, and the calcium builds upon itself. So we hear about calcium plaques in our arteries. And so what we want is, so to get the calcium to your bones and your teeth, you need magnesium and silicon to bind the calcium and bring it to the bones and the teeth. And we all are chronically magnesium deficient, which is why I tell everyone to take magnesium. And then silicon is a trace mineral that we're also deficient in. But K2 also helps pull that calcium from the blood and bring it to the bones and the teeth. So that's why if you get vitamin D3, you can pair it with K2. So that's why it's so good for heart health, is because we don't want the calcium in our blood. Everyone's taking calcium to build their bone health, but no one's taking it with magnesium. Nobody's taking enough silicon, and nobody's using K2. So that calcium is just calcifying our blood. It's calcifying our brains, our breast tissue, our joints get calcification, and we get stiff. That's why when we get older, we get stiff, because we're calcified. So my recommendation is take more magnesium. The magnesium will help mobilize the calcium. Magnesium is what makes your vessels pliable and movable. Calcium makes them stiff. And then oxalates with spinach. Yes, it's true. No calcium supplement. Good. Yes, calcium's in everything. So it's in our water, it's in our food. And the thing is with calcium is we can't get rid of it. Magnesium, on the other hand, we get rid of we burn through magnesium like crazy. So taking a magnesium supplement is super safe because it just leaves our body. But calcium, you have to be very careful, very careful. So definitely don't want to take any calcium supplements. Having it naturally in food is great because your body can, knows what to do with it, as opposed to a calcium supplement. Yeah. So K2 is usually with the D3 and then magnesium. So I recommend magnesium citrate if you tend to be constipated, magnesium glycinate if you are regular and not constipated. Most of my patients and most of the people I come across tend to be constipated. And so I recommend the magnesium citrate because it has more of a bowel regularity. But then some people are super sensitive to magnesium and are going to the bathroom too much. So magnesium glycinate is the one I recommend otherwise. Magnesium oxide is the one that's in most supplements and most multis, and it's very poorly absorbed. So I wouldn't waste your money on it. I would either do a glycinate or a citrate for the magnesium, but I would take it every day, twice a day, because we burn through magnesium. Magnesium, you burn through stress, through thinking, medications. If you're on any medications, it burns through magnesium, toxins. And so we are chronically magnesium deficient. So I take it twice a day personally. So I know it's hard to take things twice a day. If you only take it once a day, I recommend before bed because it's very calming and helps with sleep. And most people have a hard time sleeping. But if you can try and take it twice a day, and then you can go up from there. So, yeah. So like brands of supplements, I have, so if you go on to, so I have a Fullscript account. You can go on there and I have all the brands that I recommend. But generally for magnesium, just a cheap, good magnesium citrate, which is like what I take, is Now brand, NOW. You can get them on Amazon. They're from Canada. They don't have any fillers. They're a good company and it's cheap. You can get a big bottle on Amazon. So how do I get the Fullscript? Now, NOW. So put on here. So Now brand, it's like a white and orange bottle. Now for the K2, the D3K2, I like Quicksilver Scientific. They're a little more expensive, but they're liposomal, meaning it's a liquid that goes under the tongue. Highly absorbable, because the thing is with vitamins and supplements is your body needs to absorb them in order for them to be of any use, right? You can take all the supplements in the world, but if you're not absorbing them and they're not doing anything. Quicksilver Scientific is made by a doctor. He's like this brilliant guy, Dr. Shade. And they're all liposomal. So when you put them under the tongue, it bypasses the stomach, which is where all the absorption issues happen. So under the tongue, you have all the blood vessels. So it absorbs straight into your bloodstream from under your tongue. So they have a D3K2 formula. I think it's like $45 or something it's a pump that you put under your tongue. But they're good. It's a good brand. So other brands that are good, Pure Encapsulations, Designs for Health, Thorne. Those are all brands that I would recommend. And then if you go on Fullscript, I wonder if I can get my again, you can just go on. I have a okay. There we are. So if you go on there, if you create an account, then you can see all my recommendations and things like that. And you don't have to buy anything on there. And you don't have to buy any of my recs, but at least you can go on and just see. But I like Fullscript. You can get a discount on there. They have pretty good prices, and you can buy whatever. And they only use like good vetted brands too. So I use them myself to buy all my supplements. So yeah, supplements are that was that whole overwhelming talk I did, right? So that's why I was trying not to make this one overwhelming. It's hard because there's so much information, you know? Emily, did you end up taking any supplements or no? Oh, sugar and fruit. Yeah, you can, sure, why not ask?
Okay, so I have a question for you. Remember we had our whole talk about sugar, and you were talking about how healthy fruit is and the difference between the sugar that's in fruit and the sugar that's in like processed foods, and not to be afraid to be eating tons of fruits. And so it's so funny because the very next day after we had that talk.
Oh, are you up? Careful, I'm on a call.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I went to Whole Foods and I bought a whole bunch of like really delicious organic produce. And I bought these organic navel oranges, and they were so juicy and delicious. And my mouth was just like watering, and it was yummy.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like, oh, I'm eating too much sugar here. So a couple of days later, I had an appointment, and I took my orange with me as a snack. And somebody said to me, which I'm still trying to understand, which is why I'm asking you this question. Somebody said to me, you know how much sugar is in that orange? You shouldn't be eating that. It's filled amazing with sugar. And I said, I kind of got a little bit defensive. Like, yeah. Number one, why are you telling me that? And number two, that's not what Nancy told me. But anyway, I was like, so you're saying that I shouldn't be eating this? And then
this was somebody in a waiting room?
No, it was the lady that cuts my hair.
Oh.
I was like, I took it with me to have as a snack instead of like a candy bar, just eating it. And, and I said, well, again, I was a little bit defensive, and I said, well, it's definitely better than me eating a candy bar.
Right.
And she's like, no, it's the same. Sugar. It's
insane. Yeah.
It's not good for you, and you shouldn't be eating that. And I was like,
I mean, okay, so let's just stop right now. Think about it for a second. Like, no science, no, studies. Like, let's pretend like we don't have any data, anything like that. Let's just think about it. An orange versus a candy bar. Like,
it's funny, isn't it?
It just, I mean, again, I think we just need to get back to being reasonable and common sense and just what nature brings to us versus something processed,
It's like this beautiful orange was picked from a tree.
And the fact that it was bar would be and sweet means that it was ripened fairly, on the tree versus picked unripe and then ripened,
Right.
So yeah, it's again, when you have the problem is when your receptors are gooped up, meaning your sugar receptors, which is what happens when you have diabetes. When you have diabetes, it's not the sugar that's the problem. It's the fact that the receptors can't accept the sugar to open up the cell to let the sugar in. That's the problem. So it's not the sugar that's the problem. It's the receptors. And the receptors get gummed up from inflammation. So again, if you have diabetes, and I think this is the conversation we're having, if we have diabetes, that means the receptors aren't able to take that sugar and open it up and let the cell have it. So you have to limit your sugar, because then that sugar is just staying in the blood. It can't get into the cell. And then you have all this glycation problems and sugar buildup. And the cells are still starving because they can't get the sugar. But if you're not diabetic, and even if you are diabetic, you still need fruit. But yeah, it's great.
Fruit was so
again, we get into these crazy ideas about like diet and we get so focused on protein and sugars and fats. And this is actually what I was talking about earlier today about diets. And it's like, really what we need to be thinking about is vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, enzymes. What of that is in the food that I'm eating? Those are the things of life. Those are the things that are minerals, are the building blocks of our DNA. DNA mishaps and deletions and switches and changes is what leads to disease and cancer. Vitamin deficiency is then what causes symptoms in us. Lack of antioxidants and phytonutrients can then make us susceptible to toxins and UV radiations, things like that. So those are the things that we really need to be thinking about. Our enzymes, how much live food am I getting, which is why I promote the green juice. It's all live enzymes, live food. So these are the things we need to be. Of course, proteins and fats and carbs are for sure important, and what ratio we're eating those in, but we're so hyper focused on those and not all the other stuff that we're eating all these weird fake foods, these like, everyone's putting protein powders in their shakes and stuff. And it's like, we're not protein deficient, you know, unless you're over, you know, 65, then protein becomes more of a, or like, you know, some elite bodybuilder or something, or athlete. But otherwise, for just regular people, we have enough protein. Protein is not what we're lacking. What we're lacking is trace minerals, antioxidants, things like that, vitamins, nutrients. So I just, yeah.
I wanted to ask you that question because it's been on my mind, and I've been thinking, like, is what she said true? And I shouldn't have been eating that orange. But then I was like, that makes no sense. Like,
yeah.
it would have been just as harmful if I sat here and had a Snickers versus the orange.
Yeah.
Like, it was just really
yes
by that.
Yes.
So I'm going to eat my orange and not feel
like
I shouldn't be eating it. I should be eating it.
I mean, yes, it has some sugar in it, but it's got a whole host of other things in it that is fueling your body with nutrients. I mean, just the pith, the white part of the orange, full of riboflavin, you know, it's got pectin in it, which is also protective and helpful with cancer. You know, it's got the orange color in it, which is, you know, a phytonutrient that's helping your body. It's got fiber in it. It's got, you know, all kinds of stuff. And even if it was sprayed, you're taking the peel off, you know? So it's like, there's really nothing bad in it. The only thing that could be bad is if, again, you were diabetic and this was like your 5th orange and your body couldn't handle the extra sugar because the receptor is blocked, not because the sugar is bad, you know? So
thank you.
Yeah.
For clearing that up for me.
Yeah. And I mean, there's an argument to be made that we're not eating enough oranges, sugars, fruits, you know, because again, there's also a lot of trace minerals in fruits. And again, these minerals, these trace minerals then affect our DNA and our coding structures and amino acid structures. And you could get things get bad real quick when you're not able to support the DNA structures, and things get miscoded because of lack of minerals, trace minerals, and major minerals. So,
well, I think people are just afraid just because of what we hear about and read about.
Well, and so many people are diabetic now, and so they
sugar.
And they do need to be not afraid, but watch their sugars.
Yeah,
because they can't accept the sugars, but that's not what's causing diabetes. You know, people are not getting diabetes because they're eating too much fruit. They're not getting cancer because they're eating too much sugar in fruit. It's just, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that ate too much fruit and got sick, you know, like got chronic disease. When I say sick, you know, and even cancer.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, it's all a balancing act. So like if you do have diabetes, it's not that you can't eat fruit and not that you should eat a ton of fruit. It's just be mindful of the fruit that you eat. If you have cancer and you have cells that are dividing like crazy and sugar, you know, can spur that on, it doesn't mean totally cut out fruit. I mean, there's many people with cancer that are only fruit, that are fruitarians, you know? So again, it's a bigger picture, but generally fruit, I mean, yeah, we get a little crazy. So yeah, all right. Well, I'm going to stop recording.